Ha! Can we get the DJI Mavic Air to film in 4K 60 or 240 frames per second at 1080p? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Before we start off, May the 4th be with you all. Pretty big. You know, as somebody that wears Star Wars t-shirts about 80% of the time, this is the best day of the year for, you know, those of us crazy people. But today what we're gonna do is we're gonna find out, can we attach the GoPro Hero 6 Black to the DJI Mavic Air? And can we record in 4K 60 frames per second, or even get some crazy slow motion 240 frames per second 1080p? Let's just get to it. Regular viewers will know that I now have a pretty much standard setup when it comes to attaching things to other things. We are running out of the cheap ones, so we've had to use the nice 3M version, which means it's gonna be a little more secure though, so. Okay. We are attached. Now we did try this once before with the GoPro Hero 6 Black and the DJI Spark. It didn't work out so well because the Spark didn't have the oomph to carry the GoPro. However, the Mavic Air is a much stronger drone. It's carried 360 cameras. It's carried my phone when we played Fortnite. I think it's gonna do well, but I really just wanna see, can we do 4K 60 frames per second and super slow motion 240 frames per second out of it, because the Mavic Air actually will do 120 frames per second by itself, and it will do 4K 30 frames per second. But let's see if we can't get just a little bit more. Got to set everything else up. It's also getting to that time of the year where we got to do this stuff like really early in the morning because the south gets really brutal when that sun comes out. Okay, we've got everything set up. We're going to do what we normally do, which is we do a test flight first just to make sure it can actually hold the weight. Look at him. Test flight in 3, 2, 1. Okay, test flight 1, pretty good. It held it really well. I'm just impressed by not only the video capabilities of the Mavic Air, but also by its weight capacity. Like, this thing holds an awful lot of stuff. Don't try this at home. I am really impressed by what it's able to do. So let's start the GoPro. We'll start off with 4K 60 frames per second, and we'll see just how good that looks, because the stabilization on here is pretty good. It should be able to fix all the micro jitters that we're gonna get from the drone, you know, flying. And I'm pretty darn excited to see how this works out. So let's go. Resolution 4K, frames per second 60, FOV, well, we only get wide, so I guess that's what we're gonna do. 4K 60 frames per second takeoff. 3, 2, 1. It would help if I actually swiped the right thing. 3, 2, 1. It's flying pretty darn well too. Okay, we've reached max battery life. We're bringing it back. We're gonna switch the batteries. Then we're gonna do 240 frames per second. I'm pretty excited. Okay, so 4K 60 frames per second. That was a pretty sweet test. It worked out really well. So now we're gonna see, can we get actual super slow motion on it? I love slow motion, and that's one of my favorite things about the Mavic Air. It's basically like a flying slow motion camera, but if we can get 240 frames per second on this might actually be like my new aerial slow motion rig, because that 240 frames per second is really good. And we're back. Okay, battery switched, GoPro back on, 240 frames per second selected. The 4K 60s are cool to try, and it makes for a good title on the YouTube video, but the 240 frames per second is what I'm actually looking forward to. Before we start flying, let's make sure we've got our settings correct. So we're gonna do a 1080p 120 frames per second from the Mavic Air compared to the 240 frames per second from the GoPro. All right, 240 frames per second test, liftoff in 3, 2, 1. right, we're getting a low battery warning again. Let's bring it back. Okay, so that was the DJI Mavic Air filming in 4K 60 frames per second and 240 frames at 1080p. That is so cool. I'm really excited. I think it worked out really well. I mean, yeah, when you glue something to the bottom of the drone, the battery life's gonna be terrible. We only got like 7 or 8 minutes of flight each, but that was pretty sweet, and I'm really impressed at how well it went. Well, hey, again, everybody, may the 4th be with you. I hope you have a fantastic Star Wars day. Thanks for watching.